Yeah, just throw the headphones on. Good to go.
Yeah.
For the first time in UIG history.
That sounded amazing in my headphones. Holy crap, dude.
Should have a future in voiceover work, huh?
Yeah, something.
Just switch careers.
Sheesh. That's
Someday,
insane. That'd be sick.
we will make some sort of content that we like
We need
do ADR.
voiceover on.
It's just a matter of time until all of our dumb cartoons are made,
Oh, yeah.
because we'll have the resources to chase our dumb ideas.
For sure.
Bat.
So, you guys can't see, but Nate has poison ivy on his leg. And it looks way more gnarly now that it's in the light. And I can actually see it.
It's not great.
Not a good time. I thought I almost had poison ivy from the wedding that I just shot, because their van on that piece of property was like surrounded by weeds. And I like just waltzed into there for a shot of them like next to the van out of the poison ivy. And he was like, oh yeah, like you're like standing in like a field of poison ivy right now. I was like, tight. So, but I haven't gotten poison ivy yet on my ankles.
Typically,
So
it takes
I know it
a
takes
week
a
or
while.
two, right?
Well,
Which
it
makes me
takes like 6 hours to like 3 days for it to set in.
So this definitely was from Brewer
Sure,
playing disc golf.
for sure.
I was like, I thought it took like a week or two.
No, it's a little quicker. It takes time, but it's not like a week or two.
Yeah, this is definitely from Brewer because I was traipsing in there.
Did you wear shorts?
Oh yeah. So it
Mhm.
was when it was heat waving.
Oh yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
definitely wearing
You
shorts.
were for sure wearing shorts.
Yeah. But, you know,
You gotta do. You gotta get your.
you got to deal
discs,
with
man.
it. So I'm airing out this morning. It's like people don't know what our legs look like because we only wear black jeans every day.
People definitely don't know what my legs look like, because I just refuse to wear shorts.
I know what your legs look like.
You do, because you're a person that's somewhat close to me.
Person of
So-
interest.
Yeah. Person of interest. You're one of my pinned conversations in my phone. So
That's a good way to put it. So are you.
amen. My little purple memoji
It goes
guy.
Jesus, others, and then you. I'm just kidding.
Sick.
Not even funny, dude. It really goes Amanda, you, minimal.
Jesus.
Jesus is just like he's not even pinned on my texts because I don't have to open my phones to get with Jesus. You know,
Mhm.
my phones.
That'll preach.
Phone.
That'll play.
Amen, brother.
That'll preach.
So we don't have a guest this morning,
Nope.
and
Just two goons with some microphones and some cameras.
vintage UIG.
Yeah. Throwback. Go listen to Planty.
Oh my goodness.
You haven't? That's our second most played episode is Planty.
Yeah,
next
because
to
people checked our podcast and they were like, "Nope,
I'm gonna leave." It still gets plays though.
That's
like,
true.
Out of all of them, it's second in it's like Kirk's episode, Planty, and then I think it's Kyle's episode in terms of how many overall like plays.
Yeah,
And because Kirk's and Kyle's were way after the first episode. You know?
Well, I feel like somebody who would want to come check out the show would be like, "Let me check out their first." Is that our first episode? Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 001. So yeah, I mean it's like watching
Check
a
out.
pilot of a new show or something.
Yeah. I'm curious, and maybe if you guys are listening and want to interact with us, we should drop a poll. I'm curious, how many of you guys started at the beginning and
and-
worked your way up to this point,
Or how many
or how many
joined
views? Yeah,
since.
exactly.
What we can do if you're on Spotify,
We'll do a Spotify poll.
freaking interact with us, dang it. do our Spotify polls. There's always a question of like, what did you think about this episode? And we get zero replies.
Nothing.
It's just crickets. So all you people on Spotify,
Aaron,
better
I know you're listening.
shape up. Aaron, come through for us right now.
We need interaction. We need boosts.
You said boost, and I immediately thought of Rocket League.
I did too.
Because that's a quick chat. Is I need boost! Exclamation point.
I forgot that tangent. I forgot that in Rocket League, there's like a very elaborate subtext for quick chats.
Dude, it is gnarly. Like if your teammate like bricks an open net and you just quick chat, wow! Exclamation point. Or they like miss a save or something.
It's so sarcastic.
And it's also extremely toxic because like you get the people that score on you and you're like just minding your own business. And then it's like 3, like, what a save, what a save, what a save, like right in a row. And you're like, and then
it's always the 3, isn't it?
It's always 3 because that it maxes you out and then you can't quick chat for like 4 seconds.
They're probably just going.
They're just waiting. And sometimes you can tell because it'll just come up in like a rhythm. But then it's really fun when you have toxic people like that and you just like crush them. Like they come out, they like score 1 goal and they say what a save, and then you're like sweaty.
You're like, all right. I'll show you.
Rocket League is very fun. Wasted too much time playing Rocket League.
But yeah, it's been a busy season lately. As you all know, I mean, it's kind of, for those of you who maybe aren't watching real time, it's start of June right now. And that May-June season just gets super busy with all of the, like engagements and weddings and, with our age group, and
it was the
parties. And
for me, it was like it started March because March was Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then had another shoot a couple weeks after that and traveled. And then it's just been go. And the mix of like, it's a good problem to have. We talk about that a lot. Like it is a good problem, but it can definitely get very overwhelming, especially when other miscellaneous things that aren't work related come up, like car stuff or family stuff or whatever. And then you're juggling that
every weekend. The day that you were typically had off from work, you're doing stuff all day and stressed about other things, but 'tis life, my friend.
It is. It's adulting. And it can be a lot. I'm actually rereading Hurry.
Good.
Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Did you buy another copy?
I bought it on Apple Books and I fired up my iPad 2 and am reading it on my iPad.
How's that experience?
Dude, it's actually kind of tranquil because I just keep it in airplane mode because I'm afraid that if I connect it to Wi-Fi and try to sync my iMessages, it's just gonna like explode. But it's kind of
wait. Do you transfer data like through like a lightning cable from your computer, or how do you get the book on there?
Well, I did download it. I just didn't log into like my
gotcha,
my iMessages and stuff and like email and like all that because it's slow. Like it is not the fastest machine as it once was.
I don't want to be too casual here. I probably do this every episode anyways.
I do this every episode.
Yeah.
So
whatever.
It's fine. It's whatever. But it's kind of a neat experience to kind of be like not have any notifications come up and I have like 0 apps on there and just read.
I just got an image of you like, like a stock photo of like backlit face, someone reading in bed.
Yeah.
Just like Cole like laying on his stomach on the end of his bed, like smiling and like touching his iPad.
It's like there's like a book light for the iPad. But yeah, it's been good. It's
so you like reading, like, I mean, you probably prefer a book.
I absolutely still prefer a book. This was like, I was too lazy to order it on Amazon.
Well, I have your copy.
You have my copy. I was too lazy to order another one because I do like to mark it up, but I can still highlight in iBooks. But it's also kind of nice. Like I have it set up. It almost looks like a Kindle. It's like gray and white. Yeah. And so it is cool, but I would much prefer like a tactile thing. But the fact that it's completely disconnected from like iMessage and all notifications makes it more akin to a book than if I was to just read it on my phone. So it's working, but it's definitely good to like go back through that again and to be like challenged and convicted of like life is so dang fast.
Yeah.
And then just having conviction over slowing down. Like I told you, like I went on a walk last night and just like I'm like, I need to do that more. Like getting out, like being so busy that my disciplines have my spiritual disciplines as well as just my normal disciplines have all wavered and have like some have just gone by the wayside and being convicted of. I want to get back to that place. And I think part of it was a heart posture of just doing it to check a box and legalistic and not actually connecting. But that's also why discipline is so important, is because to still do that even when you don't feel something is important. However, I do think, you know, you can definitely swing the pendulum to the point of it's just all doing it for, you know, but
well, yeah, like the temptation when you are busy and exhausted is to, because intentional time with the Lord is work as much as it's restful.
That's exactly what convicted me a lot in Elimination of Hurry, is he talks about of like actually doing rest well requires effort, and it's not just like completely hands off, like check out, which it's like that mental energy again. And I think that's why in this season for me it's tough to do that, because I'm already drained from the projects and working on stuff, that it's like to take more mental energy to put towards what is going to be the most restful and trying to figure that out and then overthinking it. And like, yeah.
For me, I think like bite-sized chunks, as we always preach. Like you might not have a capacity right now that you would in like a winter season where things are slower to like dig deep into something and really, especially if you're getting back into it. Like that's how I feel, is like, what's worked well for me lately as I've tried to kind of get back into like my quiet time and scripture, is just leaving my Bible open on my dining room table. And basically every time I sit down to like have a snack or like eat breakfast or, you know, walk by and see it open, I'll like be convicted to read it. You know, and so like for you OCD people who don't like having stuff left out, I mean, having a Bible open on your table is kind of a vibe anyways.
Well, it absolutely is. And I have done that with my desk. It's always like, I don't have, because I'm at home right now and like to
take over.
Like I will do that when I have a space, because I can dedicate like a part, but like I have no actual space to do that. And usually what I do is I go out on the porch in the morning and like make coffee and oatmeal and read. And that is a vibe.
Yeah.
But I have done that before, even on my desk, where I'm more tempted to just pick it up and go like to the table and read. But no, that's super good.
Because the time that I would have spent, frankly, like on my phone probably to eat my cereal and be on my phone and like, or, you know, I took email off my phone, so I haven't been on my emails, but even just on my texts or something stupid, that's a distraction. It's not rest, it's a distraction.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you get home and you just want to be distracted. I don't want to think about my problems. I don't want to think about,
it's escape.
Yeah. Escapism. But again, all things in context, but as a lifestyle, that's definitely a struggle. But anyways, I've just had Psalms open and just like just read one or two Psalms, or I'll read one and I'll read it like 3 times.
Yeah. Because Psalms are bite-sized.
Yeah.
As it is.
So, and it's like, just, it's not like it's a deep dive study into like the theology of this passage or anything like that, but it's just a little bit of a walk.
It's nutrients.
Yeah.
That was something that I thought about the other day, of like sitting with the phrase of like walking by faith, and it's not running. Like being able to like feeling like I have to run and like do all of these things, and that's more so where like and that's more so where like the Ruthless Elimination Hurry is written from, of like this idea of like having a lot to do isn't bad. It's when you have a lot to do and the only way to get it all done is to speed everything up, like speed the tasks up themselves to like get it done. But I was thinking about that phrase of just like walking with the Lord. And that's what kind of prompted me to like just go on a walk, because I know that I connect so much with the Lord through that, and to just let my mind wander and let the Lord like bring things to mind. But the freedom almost to call it a walk and like be okay with, this is a walk. It's not a run. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And that's maybe another separate analogy, but like walking by faith and like actually leaning on God, and like almost like spiritually feel like you're like leaning back physically into like what God is bringing you through, preparing you for, prompting you, convicting you, providing for you. Just recent thoughts.
Yeah, a while back I was having a hard time falling asleep years ago, and I read somewhere like a technique. I can't even give credit. I have no idea who said this or whatever, but where you know how like sometimes they say to like relax individually every muscle, and you know, start at your toes, and then it's like a yoga meditation technique or something, I don't know. But to do that in a sense, like a spiritual sense of like a tense something, and then like relax and like
Release
lean
it.
in a way that you would lean and trust your bed. You do the same thing spiritually with like the Lord. And so like as you like lay in bed stressed about whatever, if it's not a physical, you know, something, and you do that like and breathe, to like as you lean out, like just spiritually lean on the Lord is like a really restful thing.
That's really cool.
And before you know it, you're just cached.
I have had, not to that extent or not even with that intention, but like when you are falling asleep, like pretending like you're sinking farther into your bed, like is like kind of puts your mind like out.
Yeah. So in that same kind of idea, like to give it more of a like spiritual significance, as our, not to separate our bodies from our spirits fully, right? That's wrong. But there's a sense of like God's holding me, and I can like, just like I'm trusting this bed to hold my weight, I can trust the Lord to like hold my spiritual weight,
right?
And so much more than this bed even.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was something that it stuck with me, because it's just,
it's that connection.
Yeah,
I do love that connection between the physical and the spiritual, because we are both.
Yeah,
they overlap significantly.
Yeah, and it is true. Like when you get busy, you tend to neglect your body as well, not only your spirit, right? You don't get good sleep, you don't eat right, because it's, you know, you gotta work a little bit harder to get your food prepared.
Yeah, all the disciplines are tempted to.
You don't work out. Yeah.
Yep.
No one's ever heard us talk about these concepts before, huh? Like, hey guys,
well, this is your first episode, but
we're the same people we were a year ago. Like we're working towards the same things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and kind of where we were thinking about talking this episode specifically, I think that's a good transition into talking about performance and careerism, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And kind of what that means, I think, just to open that Pandora's box.
Well, last night Amanda and I were sitting down and just kind of have felt like the first 2 years of our marriage have been great, and it's almost 2 years this month, 2 years. But just kind of like realize we both turned 25 just recently, and we're like, so
you old
we're person. 5 years until 30. It's kind of like what came to my brain.
Quarter life crisis.
Well, and I'm like, so what do I want to accomplish by the time I'm 30? What do I like want my life to look like? What do we as a couple want to accomplish by the time we're 30? And career is a part of that. and we were intending to talk about it, but we kind of went through and we laid out some family goals. Like, this is what we want our family to look like in 5 years. Because I think if you don't vision cast, then the time gets away from you pretty quickly. You don't have like a frame of reference for like any of these things. What do we want our travel life to look like? What do we want to accomplish in travel? We have the camper van. One of our goals was to finish the van and then upgrade it in 5 years, so potentially sell it and get something else. What do we want our faith to look like in 5 years, in terms of not achieving like an end, but more like, what practices do we want to incorporate? What's weird about that conversation is by the time you lay out what you want to accomplish in 5 years, you realize a lot of these things you can do tomorrow, and are just a matter of naming what you actually value and then pursuing those things. And that was profound because it's been a while since we had vision casted, and we hope to make a budget and live by a budget. We don't live on a budget right now. We've just kind of managed our money like decent. But realizing that experience, like, I've obviously hearing a lot of people say, like, if you don't have a budget, you're kind of just like guessing. You're leaving it up to like chance, I guess, in a way, which in some sense I am anyways.
And you always will.
But we got to the end of that, and I was kind of like, as we were reflecting on our goals, we had some other miscellaneous goals, like pay off our student debt fully. Again, some of these will happen quicker than 5 years. What was another one? We wanted to like host people once a month. Was it like just like things that were like, this doesn't take this major change in our life. It just takes a little bit of intentionality and then following through and having a map. And what we did realize as we were gearing up to talk about career was like, we kind of didn't care. And I was kind of convicted of that, is because I so quickly identify myself with what I do and what my title is, or how I view myself in my work, that I get lost in the real true joy of life, which is not even those goals in and of themselves, but probably more leaning towards like faith and family and friend, like people, and the life I live outside of work. And work can be an integral part of that. That's not my point. But realizing that I can find joy, and I know that whatever is ahead, I can do all of these things. You know what I mean? It's that was a really,
I think that's
profound
important.
realization.
Yeah, I've that's always been on my mind over the past like couple months of, are the people that are the closest to me, do they only value me because they are somewhat coworkers, and they're around me because I do what I do in correlation with them on the career side. And that's a tough like wrestle if you find yourself in that spot, because the enemy can play tricks on you and tell you a lot of lies about how other people perceive you. And honestly, like, all it takes is like one interaction with them to see that that's completely false, and to just like get out of your own head. And that's something that I've tried to practice a lot more, and just realize and be like, wait, time out, like slow your mind down and call them. Like, if it's that urgent, like just call it, like not even to talk about anything, but just like call them and say what's up.
I feel like people don't even think about us that much. Like, we think about what people think about us more than people actually think about us.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
That makes sense.
Well, we overthink it. It's easy for us.
What did that person think about? It's like that person was worrying about themselves.
Yeah. Or you have like some weird or awkward interaction with someone that you like can't get out of your head, and it's probably the farthest thing like from their mind or something,
And they probably felt like that was their fault or something. Like,
right. But like that idea of identity being tied to career, we've for sure talked about that before. But
it comes to pride too,
Yeah.
Like,
and I think it's also important to recognize where it's like like, yeah, we've talked about it before, but that doesn't mean like we talk about it once and we're good.
No.
Like, it's such an ongoing thing. And it's such a, that mentality is exactly what culture preaches. Like, you
Yeah.
are what you do, right? Like that comes straight at the forefront of culture. And to swim upstream in that can be tiresome and burdensome and heavy and difficult. And I think surrounding yourself with people who have your back, love you for
Yeah.
who you are beyond what you do, clearly and evidently and joyously, are, that's a good way to combat that a little bit. But
Yeah, and it's a weird tension because in some sense it's true. Like you are what you do,
mhm.
but you're not but all that you are is not what you do.
Yeah, that's not fully
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, cuz like you obviously you agree with the idea that like what you do is who you
For
are
sure.
in terms of how you live your life.
Hmm.
But the connotation is not it's almost actually ironically juxtaposing that it's the statement in and of itself
right.
because it's like you are what you do when it comes to career, but you're not what you do when it comes to your recreation or
Mhm. Or
like
just
your
like,
values or your morals. It's like
yeah.
that same that they want to apply that same the
Mhm.
world wants to apply that same statement. You are what you do in your career, and then immediately when you want to hold yourself accountable for your sin, they
Yeah.
say you're not what like it's like,
Yeah.
oh no, like like it's
That's
my truth. I'm not
hypocritical in and of
what I
itself.
do.
But yeah, it's that idea of like your human identity is not
Yeah.
like what you do. It is, but again, like you said, like we all have gifts and we all have
Mhm.
skill sets that are specific to us, and how we engage with those gifts is a part of like how God made us, but it's not the extent of God's creation
Yeah, and
over us.
there's a hierarchy that needs to be respected
Yeah.
there. Where
Yep.
like
For sure.
if you're putting that and we do, you know, we put that on a pedestal above God and above others,
Mhm.
um, above our own family, above our own responsibilities to the Lord.
Mhm.
We this last Sunday at church, the sermon was on they're going through a series on the seven deadly sins.
Mm.
The sin of sloth.
Yeah.
Um which is
Yeah.
the pastor kind of um it doesn't seem like a deadly sin compared to like lust or like
It's a very
anger
slow
or
deadly
like
sin.
greed. It's
Yeah.
like very yeah, exactly. And so that was an interesting conversation, but the bottom line being like I think the way he put it was like uh sloth is basically like you're not loving how you should be.
Mm.
Which was really interesting. Basically, like the Lord's given you, you're a steward. Reading Jesus's parable of the good stewards, the one who buried it and didn't do anything, and he
Mhm.
says, "I will cast you like out into like like I don't know, it was like a deadly pit or something
Yeah.
super like
Like grotesque.
yeah. It's like, is it that? Like because he buried it and didn't do anything? Like, oh, I mean, he didn't really do anything, and you're just gonna like be that harsh on him?
right.
Um, but the idea is that like God gave us so many gifts and so much life to live and steward that it breaks his heart when we don't utilize it. But I think that the flip side can be totally true, and we can take these good gifts and skew them and think that we're like utilizing them while we're not experiencing like relationship at
Mhm.
the same time. Like it becomes the end of it, just like we take any gift from God and we worship that gift, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth. It's like all sin is like us taking something outside of what God intended for it. Like sex, for example. Like
Yeah.
that sin is us removing it out of the sandbox of marriage. A sin in particular, before it was a sin, was a good intention of the Lord, and we have twisted it
Mm-hmm.
outside of
Mm-hmm.
what God has intended for it. But yeah, I feel like people, it's easier to name the other sins of greed and idolatry and this, that, and the other thing, and
Mm-hmm.
the other seven deadly sins. But I feel like sloth gets overlooked.
Yeah. And I think probably where I feel convicted about this, and maybe a good frame of reference for the average American or somebody in our context or bend, would be like sloth in relationship and in like service to the Lord. Maybe not even necessarily sloth in work.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, you prioritize your career, but you are lazy when it comes to like how you speak to your wife,
Mhm.
or you're lazy when it comes to seeing a need for your neighbor and
Mhm.
taking 10 minutes to help them
Right.
mow their lawn or whatever the need is. Like, that's just a
Yeah.
dumb example, but
Yeah.
I think that's where there's like opportunity for the Lord to use you in work and to
Yeah.
use the body and the talents and gifts that he's given us to really bring glory to him. And
Mhm.
instead, it's not loving how we should.
Right.
Which is a super that's
really
not what you think about when you think about sloth.
No. Well, and I was gonna say on that idea of sloth, I forget what the quote is, but it's kind of like the enemy leading you on a very like slow and gentle descent.
From Screw Tape Letters.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. If that's where it's from, like
Mhm.
that slow, deceiving descent away from God as you feel like you're maturing,
Yeah.
but it's completely the opposite.
Yeah.
That's what I think of with sloth, where it's like all of these little
Mhm.
things that continue to pile up, and then before you know it, you're
Deadly.
like so far in left field. You're like, oh, how did I?
Yeah. I think the words that C.S. Lewis uses is like, it's soft underfoot, like
Mhm.
an easy path that slightly slopes downward with no signs to let you know that you're going down.
Mhm.
It's just like unmarked, soft, easy path.
Right.
Seems like the obvious way to go.
Right.
And that's very interesting. Another insight that the pastor had on Sunday was that you go from sloth, a lifestyle struggling with sloth goes from sloth to frantically hurrying
Mhm.
to get your work done, back to a burnout,
Yeah.
and then sloth again.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I wonder if burnout is actually like a positive tool in the sense of overall trajectory, where if burnout can lead you to a place that doesn't come back to sloth, but is more of like a red flag of, because that's obviously a different season. Like, it's burnout in a season of busyness and franticness is you are almost forced to yield,
Right.
which I have experienced, and coming out on the other side of that is really beautiful and like positive because it's a undoing of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, beans.
All right, I'm gonna go get that. Anyways, boys,
And a one and two. We're back.
close
I
a different
have a new mic, guys. The magic of editing.
movie magic.
Yeah, you don't know a thing, don't you? You didn't see nothing.
Don't do that.
But it makes a cool little it's like chains on a ride cymbal. Only digital.
There's so many things wrong with that comparison. I'm just gonna move on with my life.
Yeah, but the end result is accurate for that comparison.
So we were talking about the sin of sloth.
Yeah, like burnout is it can be a useful tool, I think, that God uses to slow us down. It's being conscious of trying to not let that cycle repeat,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it reminds me of like Joseph in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
and how he was faithful, stored the grain so that when there was famine, that like he was able to give glory to the Lord
Mm-hmm.
because he was being faithful, and like a good steward of what he had. And obviously, like he managed his resources well and things like that. But if Joseph wasn't planning ahead, wasn't on top of things, like,
Yeah,
flying by the seat of his pants.
Right. Which
Then-
I think again, like we've said this a lot, but having Sabbath built into your schedule allows for you to sustainably avoid burnout and avoid sloth,
Yeah.
because you avoid burnout by slowing down and not working, and you avoid sloth because when you slow down and don't work, that's intentional and deep. You feel more energized to work when you go back to work. Like
and you have a capacity for it.
Exactly. And I think about how I try to structure my Sabbath on Saturdays of not doing anything that, and I haven't reached this point of doing it very consistently, but not doing anything on a Saturday that feels remotely like work. Like Christian, we talked about that with Christian, where it's like, does that feel like work? Can we avoid doing that today if possible? As well as like trying to shut my phone off and stuff like that. But doing that forces me to like slow down and not work to avoid burnout. But then when I do that for a deep intentional time, like not just distracting yourself like we talked about earlier, like being able to pull back makes you more energized and honestly like more passionate about the work, because you have capacity to jump back into it. You don't feel like you're just working yourself to the bone.
Well, it's like a feeling of preparing for a school presentation and doing it ahead of time and having everything you need versus cramming it half hour before you have to start. I've been in both positions, by the way. Probably more so the second one than Cole. I'm very deadline motivated, so I grind really hard, really fast, really efficiently when I do. But
well, and that works for some people,
and that's fine. It's great. Not like if you get it done, whatever. But when you do that too much with too many things for too long, that's burnout, right?
It'll get you. Yeah,
it'll get you. And not only is that burnout, does that result in burnout? I think that the seed of that is sloth. Because if I know something's coming up and I procrastinate it to tomorrow, and then I'll just do it tomorrow. Then things pile up, and your list gets longer. It's never going to get shorter that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely like fallacy on both sides, as we always talk about.
For sure.
You know, especially, you know, as humans who make up the church, we tend to, and achieving Americans, we tend to like push action in faith, which is good. But the result might be diminishing rest in faith.
Yeah, for sure.
As we've harped on.
Totally. I was going to say, I got just a little bit of coffee left.
Yeah.
We have both chatted individually about this, and not super recently.
I have no idea what you're about to say. I'm kind of excited.
But it's something that I have just noticed has come up for me personally in the past, like 2 weeks heavily. But it's imposter syndrome. And for those of you that don't know, because I didn't know what this was up until like a year ago, is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally despite being high performing in external objective ways. This condition often results in people feeling like a fraud or a phony and doubting their abilities. And I've experienced that even in the past week on shoots. I get it almost every time before I shoot a wedding. And then I get into the edit and I'm like, oh my gosh. This looks so
You're like,
good.
I actually do know what I'm doing a little bit.
But it sucks. And it's that, it's that anxiety before something happens, like the shoot yesterday. Like I was on set and I was like, why do I feel so anxious? And I do like, part of that, like on a film set specifically, is like I didn't go to film school, so I feel like, and I have had so many instances where it's like I don't know what something's called or like the etiquette, and then I like freak out because I feel like I'm gonna get fired because I don't know this thing.
You like to know the etiquette.
I do. I like to know the etiquette. I just like being prepared, and I
Mhm.
don't like things catching me off guard, which this is a way bigger conversation, but newsflash, like that's how life is. Like life catches you off guard, and
Mhm.
there's so many things that are out of our control. And
Mhm.
that's what I've been learning lately and trying to really like lean into the Lord on. Like seriously, how much is outside of my control that I have no jurisdiction over.
Mhm.
Um, and that actually is not juxtaposed to vision casting and planning, because I think that the Lord is absolutely honored through that
Yeah.
and calls us to be good stewards, right? I think that's part of the maturity
Mhm.
as humans, as people of faith, right? Getting off of spiritual milk. Um,
But he cares about your heart and the process
right.
more than the result of what you do, because he
Exactly.
can do it without you,
Right.
you know.
100%.
And that's so when you set visions and you set goals, try to be vague enough that there's room for the Lord to work in that.
Right. Well, Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs 16. That's like, in their heart, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps.
Mhm.
It's like we can have a vision, like, and I think I read this somewhere recently in a book, but it's kind of like, Lord, here's my map. Here's what I think through prayer and what you've put on my heart. Like here's the righteous, air quotes, righteous plan that I feel like you might have for me.
Mhm.
Come and change it if it's not, and have your way in it if it is, you know?
Yeah, and like surrendering and submitting to
Right.
the Lord in your visions too. It's like,
Exactly.
Lord, if this
Yeah.
isn't it, I submit it to you.
Right. Take delight in the Lord and he'll give you
Yeah,
the desires of your heart, you know?
that's good.
That's just something I've been learning, but we've only had like a few conversations about imposter syndrome specifically, and maybe that's an episode in and of itself in
Yeah.
its entirety. But
I remember the first time we had that
we
conversation.
were at your table.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you were feeling certain way. I was like, "Oh yeah, imposter syndrome."
Yeah.
And you're like, "What?"
What is that?
Yeah. I learned it from a podcast at one point,
Mhm.
a creative podcast, and it's not just creatives that experience it, but I think especially people in a creative field where you compare your work or your
It's
tastes
that,
and talents to other people so often.
like the definition, it's that high achieving people, which we both are, driven people, uh, not feeling success internally. I think, and I do think, like you're saying, comparison is
I
such
think
a
that's
robber of that.
yeah, comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's exactly it. You're like, who am I comparing myself to?
Right.
Like as soon as you just live in the day, and that's really where you've heard me harp on this for this whole last season. But I'm really like that's been the theme this year for me is just chasing enjoying the moment the Lord has me in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to be a broken record until the Lord takes me home probably because
I,
I'm never going to figure this
I
out.
was gonna
But
say that's a lifelong thing of just living where your feet are.
I say it so much because I have to remind myself
Right.
like that life is lived in the moment. It's not lived tomorrow as much as you can plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to compare yourself when you live in the moment and you're content with what the Lord brings in that moment and you just steward it. Like, and
Yeah.
when you take ownership off of yourself too,
Right.
like that's another thing. Like, even in our careers, we take so much ownership
Yeah.
and that's good for achieving things,
Right.
but it's bad for mental health. It's bad for relationship with the Lord and others. To
Yeah.
have ownership of something, to make it all about you. It's a very you oriented thing, not a very
Yeah.
service oriented mindset.
That's something that I heard on a I think it was a podcast or something, but they were talking about in relation to God's world as a whole, like content with being a manager and like not an owner, because what is ours anyway?
Yeah,
As
exactly.
well as to jump off of that a little bit. Another thing that I've been resting and my thoughts have been coming back to in the spirit of not being in control is our life is a vapor and a mist, and like how little time we actually do have here, which is kind of the subtext of this podcast as
Mhm.
as it is, but all of that kind of swirling like imposter syndrome, like who cares? Like at the end of the day, like externally, like why am I comparing this to? Like our life is such a mist and like such a vapor. Like why am I giving up brain power to
Yeah.
like contemplate these things or to second guess myself when my identity and, being confident that this is what the Lord has for me. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that last night of like, I loved RC cars like as a kid. And I have like 3 drones in my bedroom now. And like and I say that not as a brag, but as a look at what the Lord has done. And I'm not chasing
You're
that.
just a kid.
I'm just a kid. Like, and that's exactly it. Like, I've even still, like, I'll get little memories of just like growing up, like at my house, my first house that I lived in, and like playing out in the backyard and like not giving a care in the world about car problems or budgeting or like this, that, and the other thing, right? Like the reality of blending those two in adulthood of being a good steward. And I think that's where like the walk by faith thing is like we walk by faith, we are children of God, and we can have that childlike faith and be good stewards is like a tough maybe it's tough, but I think more so than that, like I'm learning that,
Yeah.
and I think that's again a lifelong thing because
Mm.
they're almost contradictory to each other of like childlikeness is like not worry about anything, but that could also lead to poor stewardship versus too much stewardship and trying to control everything is the opposite of childlikeness,
It's like a guitar string. There's tension on either end, right?
Right.
And you got to get it in tune.
Right. And then
But the tension's good.
you can play a note with the tension. Yeah.
That's a John Foreman analogy.
Mm.
I might have taken that from someone, but
Amen.
yeah. I mean, who would have thought that the Bible had such amazing wisdom?
Right.
Like the tension there, as I like to talk about how the creator who designed us gives us the instruction book on how to live, right?
Yeah.
Like why would I not read like the owner's manual?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you want to find out how your like drone works?
Right.
Go read the owner's manual, how they intended it,
Mm-hmm.
how it's best used.
Right.
And
then there's like all these little things that you didn't realize it could do.
Yeah. And
like
are you
we're
gonna
there.
like read that and be like, no, it doesn't do that.
Right.
Like that's not what
Yeah.
the owner's manual says this, but that doesn't make sense to me. So that's probably not how the drone's supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's gonna do what it was made to do.
Or reading it and you've been using it and you haven't read the manual and then you're like, oh wait, it can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And you aren't using it to its fullest potential. And that I almost equate akin to like life to the full, like
Yeah.
going all in with the Lord. If you only cherry pick pieces, you're still missing all of it. Like the fact that Jesus wants to consume all of you, in surrender. But
What a good thought, and what a good reminder for me, and hopefully
And
for you guys
myself.
today
Yeah.
as well. And that's our heart with these conversations again. This was I keep saying vintage UIG, but truly like feels like a coffee conversation that we
Yeah.
don't know we have ideas, but we
Yeah.
come into it and just have a honest conversation and leave touched because the Lord
Showed up.
works through relationship and community. And
Yeah.
so we're so thankful that you guys are here.
For sure.
Um,
I'll leave with the thought of forget where I read this too, but it was like this past week. The reality of the Lord speaking to us all in different ways.
mhm.
Of like the Lord was here in this, like the Lord uses conversations with a friend
Mhm.
to speak to you and touch you. And it was in my like daily devotional that I read or have been reading, but it's like God like you look through scripture and how God spoke to his people. Like sometimes it's a burning bush, sometimes it's a fleece put out, sometimes it's like a mentor, sometimes it's God directly speaking to you, which might be few and far between. Not that he can't, but different conversation.
Let's dive in. I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
no. But like the reality of, I don't know. I just felt like that encouragement of, God already has spoken to us in his word. So if you feel distant from the Lord, I would ask you how
Bet you're
much
not
reading.
Yeah.
Exactly. However, God uses all things to speak to us.
It's not segregated.
Right. And I think it's a little bit more profound than like a license plate. Like being like, oh, like that license plate said this word, and like I was like, not that that's invalid or anything, but I think that God, being the relational being that he is, wants to talk to you a little bit more. I don't know if profoundly is the word, but clearly, deliberately,
deeply as well.
Yeah. Again, conversations with a friend, like,
Well, themes develop in your life when, not only just a single mode or moment of communication, but desires of your heart are molded and changed towards relationship with the Lord and towards his will for your life when you seek that. Right. Like I think that's, seek first the kingdom of God, and like all of these things will be added to you.
Yeah.
Like your heart changes. And when you really listen to God, it's not just like a divine revelation, a special revelation where you sit with your notebook open or write down what he says. But there is a thing where you are being numb to what the Lord is trying to speak to you in your life. And he does it through all of those things. For us, you can see what he's trying to teach us.
Yes. Right. That's the point of the show.
Yeah. I would encourage you guys to go seek out conversations like this, even if it's not a podcast. It's like this isn't a holy moment that is unattainable for any of you guys in your lives today. Everybody has a friend that will talk to them, and if you don't, like, look for one and be intentional in that.
Bad company corrupts good character.
So I guess that encouragement, like, you're welcome in our community. First of all, you're welcome in this
100%.
conversation. We want to engage with you.
Respond to our polls, people.
Yeah, come on, baby. But yeah, I think beyond what we hope to accomplish in this podcast, at least for what we can see right now, like, we just want our listeners right now to just take something away from this, like, in the Lord, and benefit from that. And that's our desires. So we're continuing to do this in faithfulness, I guess, to what we feel called to, even when we don't exactly know what it looks like or what the results will be in the end. But we want to encourage you guys.
We're doing our best.
So thank you again for coming along and bearing with our stupid jokes until we actually get into the good stuff. That's some of the fun stuff for us, but
hopefully it's fun for you too.
Thanks as always to Steven at Quickwater for sponsoring the podcast.
Yes. It'll be late. It'll be too late when you guys hear this episode in a couple days, but Steven's got like a tent set up for start of summer.
Nice.
Which is this week, so he'll be down there. Always thinking, always coming up with new ideas and things to bring to market, which is really cool. But we were drinking an Ethiopian today from Quickwater, air roasted coffee, and it's very, very good. It's not burnt or over roasted. It's
very
really
smooth.
Yeah.
This one was very smooth.
Like, this could be a daily driver for sure. But I also just finished a bag of a limited roast. It was a Rwandan coffee, and I brought that with us when we went up.
That was good.
That was super good.
That was definitely a little bit more of a spicy.
Yeah, for sure.
Not actually spicy, but like, it had many more notes.
Yeah.
This one's a little bit
chocolatey.
More, a little bit even.
Ethiopian is a little bit more tea-like. But
I could see that.
Tea and like florally in this versus the Rwandan, I felt like was a little bit more robust, chocolatey.
Oily.
Yes, yeah. But go check out Quickwater, downtown Rockford, Michigan. Steven's doing some great things. Tell him we sent you. He's not going to give you anything because we haven't worked out that part of the brand deal. But tell him we sent you.
It's all relationship, friends.
It is. Quickwater's a great spot. very welcoming, like
Yeah.
we've talked about before.
Yes, sir.
And they just opened their like patio section.
Amazing.
And now there's a gate out.
Good weather.
Great weather. So
Thanks,
Steven.
Yes, thanks, Steven. And thanks always to Josh at Local Legend Recording for letting us record in this space.
Mhm.
It's a super big blessing. Otherwise, we'd be in my living room / studio as we were in the early days.
The early days.
There wasn't video, but my studio is like the second bedroom in my house. So we were probably 2 feet away from each other, just like.
We could try with video.
Back to the Planty days.
We could just
do you know what? We should do
ceiling mount GoPro.
We should do like a season 3 like reunion and do it in my office.
That would be sweet.
Do one episode just crammed in where we started.
Super cool.
But
that would be such a vibe.
Anyways, yeah, thanks again to Josh for letting us spread out a little bit and host more people and things like that.
Yeah. Quick record time. Dreams You Don't Forget by Night Traveler. It's been my summer jams.
Yes, sir.
That album has been on repeat for like the past 2 weeks, so I had to vent. I had to get it off my chest. For all you people, go listen to it right now.
Amazing. I don't have anything. We'll just stick with that.
Dreams You Don't Forget.
Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah. Cut. Yeah.